Hello, everyone. Pastor Tay here. Anybody out there? It is Talk Live Tuesday. I'm Pastor Tay, founder of the Titus 2 Ministry, and here we are inside Titus 2 Marriage Builders. And tonight we'll be talking about communication. Anybody out there? Woohoo! Hello. This is part of our ongoing teaching session. It is live. We're hoping to build community, and if you are out there, love to have you say hello. All right, and so tonight we will be talking about communication. But before we do, let's remind ourselves that we have a four-part rotation. The big four, you know what they are? The four topics. They are communication, conflict, in-laws, sex. Those are the four main topics that we rotate. And we are now at the top of the rotation talking about communication. And before we jump in, I want to remind you that all the teaching is inside a tab called Units. And that tab is above you if you're watching this on a mobile device. And it is to your left if you're watching this on a laptop or desktop. Okay? Hey, Keith. Nice to see you. And so Talk Live Tuesday is ready to start. And if you look at the first Units tab, okay, remember communication, conflict, in-laws, and sex, the first one has already 8 videos in there, okay? So just want to encourage you to go look at that. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, what am I going to talk about? They're just, already quite a bit in each one of the 4 there, but there's always something to talk about concerning communication, because everyone will tell you, experts will say especially, that communication is the key to building a relationship. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? We're going to talk about communication. I see somebody joining us. I don't recognize all the icons, but if you are here with us tonight, say hello. And in fact, you have an opportunity to ask your questions, make your comments in real time, and I'm going to stop and answer your questions. Hello, Martha. I see you there. And so please say hello. Give me a thumbs up that we are ready to go. So tonight, the topic is communication. Now, communication involves so many things, like verbal communication, listening, nonverbal skills, gender differences, so many subcategories under communication. It's one of the biggest categories, communication, that is. And so tonight, I want to be very specific and talk about restraint, okay? That's the topic. So if you're writing it down, and you should, okay, we're talking about restraint, meaning don't say that, okay? You don't have to say that. That's the hot topic for tonight, okay? So if you have any questions about what not to say or biting your tongue, okay, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So basically, the proposal is develop a heart of restraint, okay? And so don't just blurt it out, okay? That's the easy thing to do. Not going to make it sound easy, okay, as far as restraint is concerned. But there's kind of an attitude out there, and I think pop psychology has something to do it, and that is, you know what, if it's on your mind, on your heart, just go and say it, all right? And we should not be like that. In fact, one woman said to me, and this is all true, she said to me that her words just come out, okay? And she can't help it. And so I think her exact words to me, this was years ago, was, Pastor, I just can't help it. It just comes right out of me. And there are guys like that, and even women that say, like, what can I say? I'm brutally honest. In other words, it just comes out like a geyser, just about. You know what a geyser is? That the hot water that is underneath the ground, and it just comes up. And that reminds me of Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28. And if any of you want to write these verses and key concepts inside the scroll, I would appreciate that very much, okay? And if you have any questions or comments, please put them. And in fact, if you're watching this on a replay, feel free to drop in your comments and your questions, and we will get to them as well. So speaking of the geyser, that analogy, it reminds me of Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28. It says, "The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil." And so there is the geyser analogy there, where, notice in this verse, heart of the righteous, mouth of the wicked. And so you see the comparison there. The heart, good thing in terms of weighing its answer, but the mouth of the wicked gushes. And so very interesting verse. Let's take a minute and understand what is going on here. So the heart of the righteous, when it comes to communication, is somebody who is weighing its answers, meaning you're going to think before you speak. In fact, in the original Hebrew, it was a business analogy where, picture the ancient cart of cabbages or something like that, and they had scales, they had weights. And so basically they would carefully weigh. I mean, you're a businessman, you want to make sure that business is done properly, right? Just hand over your cabbage. And so what they did was they carefully weighed to make sure that the business was done properly. And so in terms of communication, the heart of the righteous weighs the answer. And so what are you doing when you're weighing? You're thinking about it. You're not just carelessly doing it. And so that's the idea. And so tonight we're talking about the heart of restraint. And that involves weighing carefully your answers before you speak. The second half of that verse, and I'm talking about Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28, it says, "The mouth of the wicked gushes." And so that's the opposite, right? There's no weighing here. There's just the gushing. In other words, Old Faithful, the gushing of the hot water coming out of the ground. You have no idea. Boom, it's just all going to come out. And so that's the opposite experience of somebody who's, again, not righteous, somebody who is not weighing that. And so the idea is put your words on a scale and carefully weigh before you speak, okay? So a heart that is right with God and a heart that wants to promote a healthy communication in your marriage, you're going to take time to weigh your answers before you speak. And if I may make just a general comment, you see this on social media, all the bad examples of people who just say whatever they want. It's not carefully thought out. You see the anger, you see all the abusive language, the disrespect, the arrogance, and just everything that's just coming up. It's obvious that they have not carefully weighed their answers. And so, wow, social media can be a really bad place where people are just gushing out whatever they want. And that is not the right way to do it. You have to have a heart of restraint. Now, if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and write that down. Even if you're watching this on a replay, please, you can drop your comments and questions. So can I just be straightforward with you? Don't say everything. Restrain yourself. That's the biblical principle. We have an expression in English, get it off my chest, right? And that is a bad idea. I wonder where it came from. I suspect that pop psychology has something to do with it. The idea that you have to just get it all out, okay? In other words, it's bad to hold it and just get it all out. You have questions or comments about that, drop it inside the scroll, please. But I'm telling you that that is not the biblical way to handle it. You can't just tell off people. You can't just yell at or say whatever you want to your spouse. Tell me if you understand. Give me a thumbs up, okay? You can't just say whatever's on your mind, okay? Now, people feel like they can do that at home. Maybe it's because, for whatever reason, they think your relationship is close, or at home you're relaxed and your guard is down, and as if that's a good thing. And so get it off your chest, they say. But you know what? Think about it. You don't do that at work, right? Get it off your chest, right? You don't just say whatever you want to your boss, right? Or at church. And so this whole idea of saying whatever, you're not supposed to do that. Don't do that at home. Don't do that to your kids. Don't do it in your marriage. Tell me if you understand. And so we're thinking about situations in your marriage where you're just saying whatever. And that's going to turn into a big argument. Okay. And so again, you don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. All right. So I quoted for you Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28. Going to give you some verses tonight. Here's another one. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 27. It says, a man of knowledge uses words with restraint. Okay? And a man of understanding is even tempered. Okay? So a man of knowledge uses words with restraint. So it's talking about a person who has knowledge of, in this case, the marriage, a person who has deep understanding, wisdom, okay, that you're going to exercise restraint. Now, what does that really mean? Let me give you some practical examples of exercising restraint. And so restrained speech limits a lot of insights and things. I mean, it may be true, okay, but you're not going to just let it out. It's going to limit examples, insights, things that you feel like you have to say, but you know it's going to lead into another argument. You're going to restrain. So the idea is you're going to limit the examples. You're not just going to pile on or just dump, or picture the image of a dump truck that is backing up and just dumping all the examples. And if you do, your spouse is going to be very discouraged. And think about how easy that is to do, because you know your spouse so well, right? I mean, you live under the same roof, and so you got a lot of evidence, right? And so it's just so easy to back up the dump truck and just dump all the evidence of what your spouse has done wrong, or you just want to teach a lesson, or you want to give further insight, and so you want to give one example after another because you want to validate your point. And I'm saying that is a very dangerous thing to do, because if you do that, you're going to, incite, you're going to stimulate anger, provoke the other person, and so your spouse is going to what? Return the favor, right? And then begin to do that as well. And so don't do it. It's going to start an argument. In fact, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 14 says, starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. So drop the matter before a dispute breaks out. Okay? And so here's the imagery of a dam. Okay, you know what a dam is. It holds the water back. But starting a quarrel is breaking that dam. And then what happens when a dam is broken? All the water rushes out, and then everything is water damaged. Okay? I guess the idea is even innocent people get hurt. So if all the stuff comes out and it leads to a major argument, even innocent people, collateral damage, if you will. And so the word of wisdom from Proverbs chapter 17, verse 14 is drop it. Drop the matter before the dispute breaks off. In other words, don't even get into it. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about a heart of restraint. Tell me if you understand. Yes? Makes sense? We have an English expression, don't open up a can of worms. Okay? You know what that means? Was it like 50 years ago when it was invented? Maybe longer. Where, worms were inside cans. And so if you were to undo the can, all the worms would then wiggle out. And so the expression is that don't even open it, because once the worms wiggle out, it's hard to what? Put them back into the can. Okay? So don't open up the can of worms because you can't put them back in. It's like don't start an argument because what? You can't put the words back into your mouth like the wiggly worms. And so that is the idea. So think about the analogy again of worms coming out. It's hard to control. You can't put it back in. And so it's like words that are just thrown out are like wiggly worms, hard to control. You can't take it back. Once it's said, you can't say, oops, I didn't mean to say that, because the damage is done. the words are already heard. And so it can really hurt the other person. And so you know that that type of damage will then linger on. It will continue on. And maybe it will be remembered by your spouse for a very long time. Maybe even years will pass by. And especially for women who have such superior memories. You know, men are not very good at remembering things, but women are just, for whatever reason, just superior when it comes to remembering all the little things. And so things that guys say, husbands say, that are very hurtful, or, you know, piling on, or wiggly worms, you know, hard to take back. Sometimes guys think, well, you know, sorry, you know, and they expect people to move on, or their wives to move on, but that's tough, you know, especially if you have a good memory. I'm thinking if you, as a wife, or you as a husband have a good memory, well, that's tough, okay? Because you got to not keep bringing it back up to yourself, okay? Actually, just to clarify, you know, the Bible doesn't tell you to forget everything, because that's impossible. That's unrealistic. But the Bible does tell you not to bring it back up again, even though you remember it. Not to bring it back up again where you're entertaining it again, because that's a violation of forgiveness. And that's why it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, love keeps no record of wrongs, okay? But you know what? All of that, okay, is threatened when you're constantly bringing things up from the past, and the wiggly worms get out, and you say all kinds of things that you ought not say. And so tonight, we're talking about a heart of restraint. When I say a heart of restraint, by the way, I'm talking about a heart that makes a wise decision. I mean, that thought may have come to your mind, like, you know what, I should say this, okay? Some people even plan, right? Have you done that? Of course you have. Well, you know what, my husband is coming home, and I'm going to plan to say this. And so your heart is now planning, okay? Your heart is, you know, preparing the exact words, and that may not be a good thing. You know, you're now, you know, calculating, and you're now, you know, going to say things for the purpose of just hurting the other person. You're going to what? Come up with a bunch of examples, in other words, to validate your point, piling on. And so with all of these things, it can lead to a major argument. And I'm going to say right now, in the light of everything that is happening in our country and wherever you are around the world watching this, that these are stressful times with the virus and the way that it's impacting the economy, people losing jobs. And I'm thinking some of you might be impacted by all that is happening. Even if not, I mean, there's worry and there's stress and all of these things. Is that Dr. Don? Hello? And so with all of these things going on, that it is an incredibly stressful time. And part of the stress, there's a temptation to just let it out and to say all kinds of things. And so tonight, we're talking about a heart of restraint, saying, don't say it, okay? Don't bring it up, because all it's going to do is make the situation worse. It's just going to provoke all kinds of bad things. And so don't have that attitude saying, you know what, I just got to say it. Or I'm just brutally honest. But you know what? Brutally honest, that's just about being brutal, okay? You can't just say those things, okay? And so watch your words. Think twice before you say those things, okay? In fact, I'm going to remind you of that proverb. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, okay? Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28. So that's what we're talking about right now. So listen, when you are just like saying it, like Proverbs 15, 28, the mouth of the wicked gushes evil, when you are just letting it out, I mean, just letting your spouse have it, and it is not restrained, listen, okay? Your spouse is not even hearing the words. By the way, that should remind you, if you're following the units archive, that there is a separate video on nonverbal communication. Go ahead and watch that. In there, I propose that nonverbal is even more powerful than verbal. In other words, things like tone of voice, facial gestures, body language, all of these things do impact communication. So listen, if you're just letting your spouse have it and it's not restraint, your spouse is not even hearing the words, okay? Especially if your spouse is sensitive to tone of voice and facial gestures and volume and all of that. And the initial response is probably not even related to the words at all. I mean, you might be saying, well, I'm saying all these words and they're valid and whatever. But listen, okay, your spouse is probably not even hearing the words. Okay, they're just probably your spouse might say, why are you shouting? Okay, or shh, the neighbors will hear you. Okay, in other words, it has nothing to do with the actual words. Now, if it's the wife who's sensitive to all of that and says, shh, the neighbors will hear you. But why are you always shouting? Why are you so upset? And then the husband gets even more upset by saying, you don't even listen to what I'm saying. And so there now an argument begins to start. But you know what? You gotta stop all that before it becomes a runaway train and now things are misunderstood. Words are not even heard. You're just saying hurtful things, and tone of voice and all of that is just received as an anger expression. So listen, there's no value. You got to learn a heart of restraint. So listen, how are you? You don't have to drop it in the post, but tell me, how are you? Are you a screamer? Are you somebody whose teeth are clenched? Are you somebody where your tone of voice is really nasty? Are you somebody who has a lot of volume? Are you somebody that shows through your body language that you are really ready for a fight? And so all of these things are things that you have to take a hard look at the way that you are, okay? Well, our time is almost up. Time flies. We didn't have any comments, wow, tonight. And I'm just thinking, with the national crisis we have with the virus and so many things, I know that you're preoccupied with a lot of things. And so God bless you guys. I know this is a tough time. But I hope that you will, in the midst of all the stress and challenges and maybe life challenges, maybe you lost your job. I don't know what your situation is. But in the midst of it all, you got to exercise restraint and be kind to one another. And so I gave you a little bit of insight into how to do that. You got to limit examples. You got to limit the words that you have to say. And another positive way to say this is you got to really carefully prepare your words, like preparing food. That's a good analogy. In fact, the Bible uses it. I'm going to give you the verse in a minute. But it's the idea that you don't just take raw meat and just throw it on the table, right? You don't just take bread or whatever and just throw it on the table, right? I mean, no one wants to eat that. And it's the same way. If somebody is not carefully preparing their words and they just sort of throw it on, it's just unappetizing, okay? And you are not inspired to take it in. And so consider the food analogy, where you carefully prepare the food in a way that it inspires people to eat the food, right? Presentation is a big part of it, okay? Preparation is a big part of it, that people will then take it and be nourished by it. That reminds me of Proverbs chapter 10, verse 21, where it says, the lips of the righteous nourish many. And so the lips of the righteous, in other words, the words of the righteous, are like the preparation of food. It nourishes, it nourishes many. And so think of yourself as a master chef that will take the raw ingredients, which are just a lot of raw words. We're talking about communication right here, right? And so we're talking about a heart of restraint, right? And so the master chef would take all the raw ingredients and prepare them in a way that it would actually nourish the people. That's not easy to do. Preparation is not easy. All of these things take hard work. What's the opposite? no preparation, no work at all, just throw it onto the table and expect people to eat it, So we have to weigh the consequences. We have to weigh the benefits. We have to weigh how communication is impacting our marriage, okay? So it's all about that. Preparation, nourishment, the ability for the other person to take what you say. And so again, exercise restraint. Bite your tongue. At least that's the first step. But it's really not as simple as that. It also involves weighing, meaning in your mind, think it through, and then choose to speak. And then carefully choosing the words that would nourish the other person. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 21. Tell me if that makes sense. Yes? All right. And so with all of that, I've referenced the other video in the archive, the units category, on nonverbal communication. That is relevant to tonight's installment on A Heart of Restraint. And I'm going to also recommend another one on wisdom and timing in communication. Okay, that was actually the first video I did on Talk Live Tuesday. And I mentioned that because, listen, a heart of restraint, meaning, you know what, I'm going to bite my tongue, I'm not going to say it, is connected to the timing and being sensitive to it. Maybe you need to restrain now and then find a better time to say it in a nicer way. And so you want to watch that one as well on wisdom and timing, finding the right time to speak. And so, listen, don't overreact to this video and say, well, then I can't even say anything, okay? That's not the point, all right? It's about being wise, weighing your answers carefully. And I'm going to say, in the light of timing and looking at the situation and being sensitive to it, the part of weighing is to say, you know what? This is not the right time. I'm not literally saying you can never talk about anything serious. I'm saying find the right time and then carefully choose the words so that it would be received by your spouse. Okay? So tell me if you understand. All right, so that's it for tonight. Looking at the clock, well, time flies. It's been almost 30 minutes. I did all the talking. Hey, you guys need to jump in and participate. That would have been more fun. But anyway, I hope that you guys watch this, even on a replay, and benefit from it. I'm thinking some of you guys are watching and didn't say hello. All right, you guys, let's try to build a vibrant community here inside Titus 2 Marriage Builders. And so that's it for tonight, okay? This is the 9th installment on communication, okay? Woohoo! Okay, that's great. That we're continually building a library for you to access anytime, okay? Any day. But speaking of days, this is Talk Live Tuesday, where every Tuesday we come to you, and I'm not the only one who is speaking, and we will have other guest speakers as well as we continue to unpack the 4 major areas of marriage: communication, conflict, in-laws, and sex. And so those are the 4 major areas. And so this is Talk Live Tuesday. Make sure you check the units tab and find the other ones. Even if it's on a replay, please drop your comments and listen. If you are in a difficult situation, and if tonight's topic has sparked something in you where you feel like, oh man, our communication is not good. There's a lot of arguing. There's just a lot of communication that is not restrained. And if you need to talk to someone, you're welcome to contact me for a free conversation. And we can talk and diagnose the situation and come up with a plan to improve your communication situation. All right, guys, that's it. God bless you guys. Prayers for you as this world is just going through a really difficult time. And I hope that tonight's installment on A Heart of Restraint blesses you and gives you insight into having a healthy communication in your marriage. All right, guys, good evening to you all.
Thanks for joining us for a devotional drink today. If you love Espresso, click here to subscribe so you know when the next one is ready to enjoy. Visit our website for resources for every chapter of your life. And if you're thirsty for more, click here. See you next time. May God bless your day.